People say parenting has gotten harder and parents are reporting more stress. But what was it like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago?
That you gotta step back. And actually when parents step back, it allows kids to step up more.
Motherhood in America is broken by design. I think it's so hard to have these conversations about what your parenting style should be when we are living in a culture that shames moms.
Yeah.
I think that most people do want to evolve. They do want to parent a little bit differently than their parents do.
Becoming a parent for the first time is a steep learning curve. There's nap schedules, wake windows, feeding schedules. There's getting all the correct gear, learning how to install a car seat. But the learning curve certainly doesn't stop there. The kids get older, and then there's screen time, bedtime, snack time, timeouts. Becoming a parent is taking crash courses on a million decisions again and again and again. Where we get most of our parenting advice has changed. It's no longer from grandparents and friends and pediatricians. Instead, there's been an explosion in the advice industry. Move over, Dr. Spock. There are now countless parenting books, courses, and sleep training consultants. And then there's the public forums like Reddit. You can search almost any question and find that someone else has asked it somewhere on the internet, with many faceless strangers chiming in with advice and anecdotes. Yet despite all of this information at our fingertips, people say parenting has gotten harder and parents are reporting more stress. But what was it like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago? Well, we're not going to go back that far, but we do have 3 generations today to talk about parenting: a baby boomer, a Gen Xer, and a millennial. First, I want to welcome Lenore Skenazy. Lenore, you were a columnist minding your own business when you went viral in 2008 for a column you wrote about letting your kid ride the subway alone in New York City. He was 9. It ended up going viral and getting you labeled as the world's worst mom. Now you advocate for more independence for kids with your organization, Let Grow. You wrote a book about raising free-range kids, and it's grown into a cultural and political movement. You were recently name-checked in a Doonesbury cartoon.
Yes.
I'm delighted to have you today as a fellow baby boomer and as a fellow parent. Tell us about your parenting credentials. How many kids do you have, and how old are they?
Oh, are those my credentials?
Those are your
I thought, having written that book. So I have 2 sons. They are 30 and 28.
Okay. Next, Reshma Saujani is with us. Reshma, you are an organizer and an advocate with focus on women and girls. You founded Girls Who Code in 2012 after a run for Congress. And more recently, you founded and lead Moms First, an organization that is mobilizing for paid family leave and high-quality, affordable childcare, among other things. You also have a podcast called My So-Called Midlife. That's a big clue that you are Gen X, right? Thank you so much for joining us today. I know from the podcast you have 2 boys. How old are they?
I have 2 sons, Sean and Cy. They are 6 and 11.
6 and 11.
I know. Sandwich generation.
Yeah. Finally, I want to welcome Kristin Gallant. You're a parent coach and the co-founder of Big Little Feelings, which has a gigantic social media presence that offers classes for parents and things like how to manage explosive feelings, potty training. I guess those 2 things are both explosive, and also for how parents wrangle toddlers. You co-host a podcast called After Bedtime with your Big Little Feelings co-founder, Dina Margolin. We're glad that you can join us today. You're a millennial and you have 3 kids. How old are they?
I have a 9-year-old Tallulah, a 7-year-old Juniper, and then a little boy named Fox, like the animal.
How old?
He's 3.
3, okay.
He is 3.
All right, so we got a good age range.
Yeah.
And on a personal note, I recently became a father again for the 3rd time. I'm a baby boomer. I've got a 6-month-old at home and 2 adult children. All right, I'm gonna start off with a bit of a softball. In one sentence, what is the goal of parenting? Kristin, your kids are the youngest, and so you're really in the trenches. You take this one first. What's the goal of parenting?
I'm going to be rebellious and give you 2 sentences.
Okay.
Ooh. Okay. 1, I believe what the goal is not of parenting is raising a child to be what we want the child to be or what we thought we never could be. What I think parenting is raising a child to be the best, happiest, most successful, most resilient version of their true individual selves.
Okay, great. Reshma, how about you? What do you think about, what's the goal of your parenting?
I'm going to continue the rebellion. So the goal of parenting should not just be what's good for the kids, but what should be what's good for the parents. And I think that that's freedom and choice.
Ooh. Freedom and choice
for parents.
For the kids and the parents.
But mostly freedom and choice for the parents.
Okay. And freedom and choice to develop their own.
Like to set up a structure of parenting that gives them freedom and choice.
Okay, great. Lenore, your kids are grown up, at least chronologically.
Yeah,
right?
I'd say even every which way at this point. After some rough times, doesn't mean it's all straightforward.
Yeah, and so you're dealing with adult kids. The job never ends, but it gives you a different bit of perspective. What do you think about the way that Reshma and Kristin talked about goals? Do you agree with that, or what would you add or subtract?
The idea of freedom and choice made sense, letting them sort of become who they are, and that's what you're talking about too. Mm-hmm. I would soft pedal the idea of they have to become the very best at every, even happiness. That's hard to ask for, but yeah, I mean, it's going to be hard to find rebellion among us if we think that parents get to raise the kids as the kids are unfolding.
Let me focus or follow up on something that you said though. Would you accept an average kid?
Absolutely. I think when I say true happiness, because that's a high bar. Everybody's happiness is a different level. What I mean is true contentness. I mean resiliency. I mean there are setbacks. I mean if they want to be a ski instructor, they're a ski instructor. If they want to, what their true self should be, and not the most successful, shiny, happy version of themselves.
Do you, Reshma, do you buy that, or what? And when you say freedom and choice for parents,
I'm listening to all this. I mean, listen, I don't spend my time thinking about kids as much as I spend my time thinking about moms, because I think part of as we talk about the generational differences, I think the pressures on parents and mothers are so much bigger, right? There's that stat that parents today, mothers today, spend more time with their kids than, in the 1970s,
right.
stay-at-home moms did.
Working moms today spend more time with their children
than stay at home.
Right.
And so we talk a lot about how do we parent our kids? And we don't talk enough about, how did we get here, right? And so to me, motherhood in America is broken by design. I say that, we've been conned for the past 250 years since the ink dried on the Constitution. And, what do I mean by that?
That's a long time.
It's a long time. But if you just think
even
about
older
design.
than the boomers here.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Hard to believe.
Why does the school day end at 3:30?
Why does it start at 9?
Why do we go to school?
Why do we, even the scheduling of society has been made to put pressure on the caregiver, which is most of the time a mother. Why are parents spend more for childcare than their mortgage? You're putting people into financial strain. And we make it so damn hard. Okay. I mean, that's the point, right? It's we have so much cultural pressure. I mean, the another article that I read about the declining birth rate and why I should have a children and bake sourdough bread at the same time.
Is that different than the motherhood paradigm that you grew up in?
The motherhood paradigm I grew up in, which I think we both grew up in, was really different in that there was a lot of trust that the kids were going to be okay without constant input from the parents in terms of watching every game, driving them to after-school activities, making every snack, answering every question, and high-fiving every achievement. And now you're getting the grades from school every day, and you have to talk about, I saw you got a B+ on the soccer and the Spanish quiz. There's just so much more expected of us, as if kids would feel bereft or they would end up undeveloped.
If that one macaroni painting was not preserved forever.
Right. Well, the macaroni paintings were preserved forever.
Yeah, right? Yeah, that's true. They break down slower.
Right, but the mom wasn't saying, "Oh, I like the way you put that piece of macaroni. Want to do another? That's I love it. It looks like a smile. Doesn't that remind you of a smile? Smile starts with S, right? That was not happening.
Let me just to kind of adjacent to this. How important is parenting? Because this kind of follows. No, it kind of follows from what you're talking about. And there's the Judith Harris book, The Nurture Assumption
Wait a
from the
minute,
late 90s.
I wrote down Judith Harris. That's
No, but
my note.
this was a big book in the late 90s,
Yeah.
and it basically argued that
Before you were born.
parents
I know. The boomers.
have much less influence on how kids turn out. In the past, it's mostly like they kind of select a peer
No,
group.
it's
but
that
even-
there's so many
but-
influences on them, not just the parents.
Right,
is what
but
the point.
I mean, do you feel a pressure to be the biggest influence in your kid's life at every moment?
So I think that this is where our generation, and we'll get to social media, I think this is where the misconception is huge. I do not think you need to be at every single sports game. Research does not support that. I do not think that you have to walk over and do macaroni art and then talk about it and then say, that's an S, that's a teacher's job. I'm not teaching my kid S's. Now, on the flip side, what we do know is that we are the only mammals that are born, perhaps also orangutans, but we're the only ones who are born underdeveloped. So a deer, when they are born, they just run off, okay? And so our children, when they are born, they can't lift their head. There's just explosive growth happening at the beginning of their life, between ages 0 and 5. And how they grow and how they develop is shaped relationally. Now, where people get this completely misconstrued, and I wish, and my dream is to shout this from the rooftops, this does not mean you have to have the highest pressure and have little cut up cucumber shapes. Never. You don't have to be at every baseball game. All these things that we are doing pressure on ourselves. If you can relationally stay connected, if you cannot
Can I just real quickly, what does it mean to be relationally connected?
Relationally connected means there's different types of parenting styles, and we'll get to that based on this whole gentle parenting trend, which gentle is the wrong word. If you really boil this down, you do not need to be around your child 24 hours a day. You don't need to be around your child 18 hours a day. You can go to work, and when you come home from work, you are excited to see your child. You are not following your child around, shaming them, saying, what's wrong with you? What's this? Shaping the image of themselves. You are hard on them. You are punishing them. You are sending to their room. You're shaping their brain developmentally, right? And so when you say, hey, you're a bad kid, get in your room, I never want to see you again, and you'll never amount to anything, that's probably going to form the neural pathways like, hey, I'm worthless, I'm never going to amount to anything. We all know people as adults who are sitting in their shame, who can't get themselves up at the end of the day. And so it's actually a pretty low bar, I think. You have to respond correctly 30 to 50% of the time of saying like, hey, you're cool, I'm here for you, I'm always here for you, and that's it.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
I want
really
to
it.
talk about, I think that this is an important part, but I think to like even, sorry Nick, to even get there, that's why I think it's so important that we lose sight of the structure. You know, my parents were refugees. They came here with $10 in their pockets. And like, they were trying to, you know, my father had to change his name, find a job, pay the bills. Like, there was so much pressure. And then it was the 80s. We were one of the few brown families in a white working class neighborhood. And that in of itself was like a hard challenge and adjustment. And so I think that like, to even get to the place where you can put down your shoes, take off your coat, walk through the door, and be ready, I need to have support.
Correct.
Right? And so to me, that's why
can I ask
we
that?
have to start thinking about how are we providing families the support. Childcare, flexibility, grace, right?
You cannot have one without the other.
You can't have one without the other.
Let me ask then, just as we close out this section, and again, to go back to the idea of how do things change over generations, or even, you know, parents, you know, we were children once, many of us stay children forever, but we're always kind of fighting the last battle. But like, how has parenting changed, you know, from the way you were raised to what you want for your kids?
You know what? I think, I was just telling you the story. My mother didn't read my essays at school. Right. She didn't know what classes I was taking. She barely knew what my teachers' names were. You know, if something happened at school and I got, I don't know, beat up, called a name, then they were in it, right? But for the most...
Or if your grades were terrible, like markedly terrible.
Yeah.
Can you imagine her with markedly
terrible? Yes, I was. I spent a lot of time in detention. No, I did.
But like a report card, like instead of every day, it would be like twice or once or twice a month.
They weren't negligent,
right?
But they were like, if I need to intervene, I will intervene. So like, to me, and I turned out just fine. Well, so ironically, I was telling
really up to your kids to say that.
I was telling Nick the story that when I was doing a parent-teacher conference the other week, his teacher starts by saying, well, Sai told me that you never open up his backpack. and I was like, oops, right.
Yeah.
But my point is like I've adopted a lot of the parenting style that I was raised with to my kids, which is very not in vogue with what I see on social media and how my friends raise their kids.
So it's less
and you did that because?
I'm not a helicopter parent.
Right.
I'm not so intensive. I'm not up in the business for on every little thing, right? Like, and I think what I've raised now are 2 boys, which is important because they're boys who will say to me, Mom, I have swimming tomorrow. Can you grab my swimsuit? Or Mom, I need $20 because it's the book fair. Like they are on top of their lives and what they need, right?
It's amazing.
I'm going to push back. I would like to push back a little bit on this because I do think in this generation, I think that can be your story, but I also see a lot of stories where it was almost similar situation with immigrants who came over. And it's the opposite. It was high achievement. It was you better be the best. You better be a doctor, a lawyer, or a this or that. I don't care about your well-being. I don't care about your mental health.
But they were trusting her.
My thing is, what I think the difference is between the generational styles, if this is my opinion, is I think that those generations wanted a child that behaved no matter what. Outwardly, they behaved. They were well behaved, they were quiet, they did well in school. That was the goal. The goal was not later on in life, and then later on in life, those kids would be successful, and they'd be 3 things successfully, right? Doctor, lawyer,
engineer.
I'm missing one. Sure, engineer.
That's it.
Okay, and then I think the only difference is with our generation, we are not so focused on an outward behavior of how a child appears to the world. We're focusing on their inner mental health, their inner true resiliency that will lead to actually good behavior, but their own mental health. We're not detrimenting their mental health for how they should be outward facing. Same with when they grow up, then they're also not fitting into a box.
Let's, Lenore, talk a little bit about this from the boomer perspective, because your parents then would have been like the greatest generation.
They were.
Did they have an internal, or did they speak to your internal emotional states at all?
Never in those words,
Yeah.
but I feel like I was raised by 2 loving parents, and the thing that I got most from them, and it sounds like you got from your parents too, and probably you did too, because here you are, is a lot of trust. A lot of trust that I could handle things, a lot of trust that I would do well enough in school, that I would have friends, that if I was taking free time and just drawing in my room, or I spent a lot of time looking for 4-leaf clovers, that this wasn't going to make me a disaster as a grown-up. And so it was trust in me, trust in the neighborhood, trust in their parenting, and it wasn't questioning whether every interaction was emotionally correct or not. It was just sort of, I mean, when you were going to ask, you never asked me, what's the purpose of parenting? I'd like to raise kids. That's what they were doing, and it wasn't that they didn't care who we were or how we turned out.
And it's such an interesting conversation because I also think, just personally, right, I have to be really centered. I have to wake up every morning and feel like, I have the time, quite frankly, to be emotionally centered and present and focused in order to even be able to ask that of my child. Do you see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And so this is what I think.
That's what we weren't asking. Nobody was saying, am I centered today? Can I deal with my child? What am I going to say to them? How are they going to react? How is this going to impact their mental health? It was like, here's breakfast.
Right, and you're just trying to make it through the day. And I think the point, though, is like, I also think that, like, and I do think, like, it is important for us. I've been trying to do this exercise just personally, like, to my body. How does my body feel today? How am I feeling today? Because I know when I get centered, I'm gonna get out of bed, and even if, like, no one's brushing their teeth or putting on their clothes or, like, giving me a hard time, right, I'm gonna show up the way that I wanna show up. But that means that I have to have the time, right? And that's why I think it's so important.
Did you feel that, I'm curious if you, just to close out this section, then we're gonna move on to a new topic, but did you feel that way as a boomer parent, that, first and foremost, it was you're
even older than I am. Well, but go on. Sounds like I raised a boomer.
Who is a parent, that when you woke up, the first thing you had to do was kind of do like an internal check system on you.
No, but that's also me.
This is what I'm saying is that the generational shifts might be, might be substantially different.
I think you're right in that I feel like basically you wake up and you deal with your kids, but also I loved we had a nanny. And so however I was feeling that day, I left for work and somebody else looked after them. And then when I came home, we related, but I also thought that if they weren't with me, that was okay. If they spent time on the way home and went and played at the park, that was okay. It was basically easier, I'd say.
I want to say though, I think because I love your experience as a boomer parent, and I think that, and I'm not taking that away from you,
lady.
but I will say, I mean, my parents were boomers, and a lot of people that are now parenting, we are parenting reacting to the boomer generation,
who of course were also reacting to their parents.
Correct.
Exactly.
Who were
it is
seen
one
as
by
emotionally
one.
unavailable, but highly
100%,
demanding.
and now we're trying to do things the opposite. In many of the parents that I am seeing, what they experienced having boomer parents was pressure to be the best, pressure to be quiet, pressure to behave, pressure. So it feels a little different than my childhood was not the nanny is going to pick you up and then maybe you go to the park. Mine was you're going here and then you're going to the math tutor, then you're going to softball because you're going to get a full ride for softball for college. You better get that full ride or else. And it was pressure.
And if I may, just to round out this section, my experience as a boomer child was in keeping with some of what you were talking about. When I went out, if I was out with my parents, I should not embarrass them. I should present myself and follow certain things. But it was not necessarily that turn, and this is also partly class-based. They were not like, and you have to be an astronaut or a doctor or a lawyer. Right. It was like, you just have to be independent.
You just have to host a debate show.
Yeah, that was their goal. And sadly, they didn't get to see it. Okay, we're going to close that out, and we're going to go to a new segment. If the goals of parenting are our ideals, things can get messy once we're actually in the room with real live kids. This is kind of the parenting equivalent of Mike Tyson saying everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face, right?
Yeah, right.
And the kid's diaper explodes, whatever, all your theories are, beside the point. So let's get into some of the strategies or philosophies of parenting. And I want to start with one of the most prevalent in parenting today, or parenting discourse. This is what is often called gentle parenting. The phrase is attributed to a British author, herself a parent of 4, Sarah Ockwell Smith, and she describes it, to put it really, really simply, as treating kids with the same empathy and respect we give other adults. This idea has taken root in parenting, but it's also been very divisive. People disagree about how to apply these ideas in practice and whether this philosophy can achieve the results it promises. But I think we can all agree that it's in the ether, so let's talk about it a little bit. Reshma,
yes.
When you hear the phrase gentle parenting, what does it mean to you, and has it influenced you as a parent?
Yeah, I mean, listen, Kristin's the expert on this, so I'm gonna let her speak to that. But I think from my perspective, it's like, I feel like when I hear the term, it assumes that you have bandwidth. It assumes that you kind of have the support. And we already talked about, again, in this world where we don't have childcare, we don't have paid leave, we don't actually provide, we're the wealthiest nation that puts the least amount of money into childcare.
On point.
Yeah,
oh my God! Oh my God!
Wait.
My point, to keep going on this. So look, as I said before, my parents were refugees. I was not gentle parented. I was disciplined the old-fashioned way. My parents were just trying to put food on the table and pay the bills and just survive, right?
When you say you were disciplined in a traditional way, what does that mean? Does that mean physical? Does that mean more like timeouts alone? If you're comfortable sharing, what?
Okay, you want me to troll my parents, you know what I mean? I was trying to right? I think we were
disciplined.
We were disciplined, and whatever that means. We know what that means, I should say.
Harshly disciplined, sure.
But that's what people did back then. Yes. People spanked. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? I was terrified of my meaning. My father said be home at 10 o'clock. I was home at 10 o'clock, right?
But I was home at 10 o'clock not because anybody was disciplining me, just because I was a good kid.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think it was I was a good kid too, and I was scared as hell of my dad.
You're still scared,
right? But
I just don't feel like it's.
So gentle parenting.
What is exactly?
Is not something that you were not treated as a miniature adult by your parents. Do you treat your kids?
I find this conversation so interesting because I think you assume, and going back to class, that people who are barely trying to get by, and the vast majority of people in America don't have the economic luxury of actually thinking about these things. They're just trying to get by. And I think my parents were in that position. I think most families that I speak to are in that position. And so for me, having more resources, having more support, and looking at this as someone who's kind of, again, leading a movement of moms, I think it's so hard to have like these conversations about what your parenting style should be when we are living in a country that doesn't have structure, and we are living in a culture that shames moms, right? Which we haven't gotten to, right? Like right now, the prominent conversation when I open up Instagram is, are you a trad wife or a girl boss, right? Are you gonna, like milk a cow, or are you gonna hustle so hard that you don't see your kids? In some ways, that's like an indication of how we tell people to parent. Work, right? And spend the least amount of time with your child. So to me, I want to get to a place in my own parenting, which goes back to like the body checks, right? And the meditation is like, how do I get to a place where I'm centered, where I can show up to be the parent that I want to be?
Yeah, what about, I mean, a lot, you are kind of presuming, and my kids have all, been to daycare. And but that itself is not necessarily a choice that every mother wants to make. A lot of women want to stay home with their kids.
100%.
And some fathers.
So I said freedom and choice
that.
when I said in the beginning. I think we have to create a society that allows people to choose. I told you, I was at an event last night with a bunch of childcare providers who all provide daycare, night daycare.
Oh, wow.
You also forget that there are so many parents who are shift workers or who are in families that are by shift workers, meaning the mother works from 9 to 5 and the father works from 5 to 12. They don't see each other, right? And so we have to, I think, create a parenting style that works for a lot of people, and we also have to not shame people for the things that they have to do to simply just survive and get by.
Maybe it's not a parenting style. Maybe it's just trusting parents that they're doing the best they can, and it'll probably be okay.
So, Kristin, what do you think about? You've said recently on your podcast that you hate the phrase gentle parenting, but the way that you talk about it seems very much in the universe of gentle parenting. Right? You are not just telling your kids because I said so, or you're like, I don't want to hear it, just go to your room.
I'm not spanking them.
Yeah. So talk about how do you, what are you aligned with in terms of gentle parenting, and then what is like, okay, I don't get this.
I mean, listen, I think this is probably one of the biggest discussions of right now, of our generation right now of parenting. Gentle parenting isn't technically in research a term. So there's no way for anybody out there to say that gentle parenting is the best way to parent or based on outcomes, because gentle parenting is a made up term. Right. People are taking gentle parenting in many different ways, many different ways. So according to research, and I'll make this as brief as I can, there are 3 core ways of parenting. There's authoritative parenting, that's probably what the boomers did, that's low warmth, that's high control.
And high spanking?
This is high spanking in general. And it's also right now, right? It's also 50% of the country. Emphasis on punishments, strict rules, do what I say, do what I say.
We've got authoritative.
That's authoritative, okay? Permissive is next. This is where many people think that is what gentle parenting is.
People think that's what free range
anyone
parenting
who
is.
has written a book or is doing a parenting account or is a therapist, they are not talking about permissive parenting. That is not what gentle parenting is. Permissive parenting is high warmth, low boundaries. Kids are doing whatever they want. Kids are running the show. Parents are loving, they're emotional, they're tuned, but there's absolutely no structure, there's no boundaries, it's chaos. The outcomes of that, by the way, the children, low frustration tolerance, more impulsivity, more behavioral problems, poor self-esteem. And that's where the whole debate online, when you see the boomers and the people coming in being like, gentle parenting is raising snowflakes. No. Permissive parenting absolutely is without a doubt.
And then the third strategy.
Authoritative parenting, which is what any therapist or any credentialed person on the internet or any of these books are saying, authoritative. High empathy, high boundaries, and structure. So we are not letting our kids get away with the show. We are the leader of the ship. While your child is upset about your boundary, your rule, your thing, you say to them, it's okay to be sad, it's okay, you're emotionally connected to them. And that is where we see the best outcomes based on decades of actual research. This shouldn't actually necessarily be a debate anymore, because there's so much research that shows they come out emotionally attuned, they come out more resilient, they have lower anxiety and depression, a better child-parent relationship. And to your point, research also shows you only have to get that right 30 to 50% of the time.
No, I like that.
And I
wish, can we take that a couple percentage points lower?
Yeah, you
social
fail a lot
media
more.
makes it seem like you've got to do it this exact way and exactly perfectly and around the clock and with somebody who stays home all the time. No, have a nanny, have daycare, go to your job, go out to dinner, fill your own self up first. I hope you have more structure. That's a huge part of it. But if you are showing up 30 to 50% of the time that you're with your children as a whole in that way, you're going to have those positive outcomes.
Can you do a little demonstration of what, like, I'm the child. I want to know, like, what would it be?
I'd love to.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
Go for it. Well, I'm a child, so what did I do?
Well, what are you doing?
What do I do?
Oh, hey, she's hitting.
Right. Okay. Right.
You didn't clean up.
I didn't clean up. I don't want to clean my room.
Yeah.
I hear you don't want to clean your room right now. Okay. Is it because you're tired from being? How old are you?
I'm 6.
You're
I don't
6?
want to clean my room. I like it messy. Go away.
Go away. I hear you. I hear you. I will give you some space, because I'm hearing you need some space, after we clean up your room. Here's what we're going to do. I know you like the game, I don't know, freeze dance or whatever it is. We're going to go put on the thing, and if you get 5 blue stuffies or 5 blue things in your room into this bin, you get a point. But if I get 5 red stuffies into this bin, I get a point. Now this is a little more extreme. You got to have a lot more energy to do something like this.
This is a lot of
But
time.
if you don't want to do this, what I would just say is, I hear you. I know it's hard. It's time to go clean up your room right now.
Okay.
Okay, Lenore, comment on this
Time to clean up your room.
from a kind of free range.
Lenore's
Explain
side.
quickly what free range parenting is,
Free-range
and then
parenting
how does
is-
that intersect with what we're
Free-range
talking about
parenting
here?
has a lot of trust. It has a lot of trust that the kids are going to be okay, that it's not all up to you, that they have a lot of genes, experiences, other friends, teachers, so many influences on them, so that every little exchange between you and your child does not make that big a difference, right? It's not going to emotionally shape them or cripple them, even if you said the wrong thing. And I love your 30 to 50% has to be right, but I even think like 30 for 50% is like, I said 4 stuffies. If I'd said 3 stuffies, then she would have had more time and it would have been a better relationship. So even thinking in percentages makes me so nervous. And so free-range parenting trusts that things are going to be pretty good, and especially if you trust them with a little bit of being able to roll with some punches, being able to roll with you being curt sometimes, and with you being like,
But
stupidly
what do you
permissive
do with
sometimes.
that? You know, the room is not clean.
I cannot tell you. I really cannot tell you what to do with the broccoli eating, with the tantrums, all the stuff that you understand, cleaning the rooms. All I can tell you is that when you have the time, or even if you don't have the time, you're told to spend all this time with your kid, knitting every synapse, making every interaction emotionally significant, and the correct amount of empathy with the correct amount of authoritativeness. And I say, Let Grow says that you got to step back. And actually, when parents step back, it allows kids to step up more, and we're told that everything is so important that you must be with them all the time. And if you're not with them, somebody else, you have to outsource it to a teacher, a coach. And really, please give yourself some grace. That it's like it's not a project. It's a person you're in a relationship with.
Yeah, and also this is why I think there's such a almost like a concern, like a
conspiracy against moms.
No, well, I was also going to say,
that.
but I think there's also this nostalgia for traditionalism, because if you have to like show up or say the thing, right, and that is really on you. Again, let's go back. It's the mom, because she's normally the one that's caregiving. Then she can't really be working, because that takes a lot of time. And I think that's, again, I'm saying that is why I think in society right now there is that nostalgia back to encouraging women to not
Who is
work and stay
pushing
at
that
home.
nostalgia? Because when you look, the trad wife movement, which is traditionalist, I mean, it's in the name, it's not like it's a bunch of, mustache twirling, patriarchs who are doing that. Like, where is
Well, it's
that coming
complicated
from?
because I think part of this, like you said, as we've talked about, like in the 70s, there's a huge infusion of women in the workplace. And I think that there was again, a culture movement about being a girl boss, you know what I mean? Working really hard, getting the corner office. Don't worry about your kids, they're gonna be fine. You just go get your dreams. And I think the backlash to that was the trad wife. And one of the things, we have a film coming out, No Country for Mothers, in June. It's just, we've had these binaries since the beginning of time. They're not new. Like, Phyllis Schlafly is like the OG trad wife. So, but part of I think,
who figured out a way to spend as little time with her kids
family.
as possible.
And so I think
like, she's
we all
the
watch
real,
the miniseries.
right.
yeah.
And so I think what you're saying, which I think is important, is like, trust the kids to kind of figure it out and be on their own. They don't actually need someone, i.e. the mom, right?
With them all the
With
time.
them all the time.
But
Not
this-
only do they not need the mother with them all
Yeah.
the time, it's really good if they're not with the mother all the time. And one of the things that Let Grow pushes for is not only more independence, going out and doing things in the real world, helping out, going to the grocery, but also free play, so that they're always,
and
so that
going
they
back
have
to the-
this
and what
happening
you're
back
saying
and
is
forth.
it doesn't have to be
the room
yeah.
example.
Yeah.
My first instinct, what I wanted to say was, is the room really important to you? Like, can I swear on this? Probably not, but like, F the room if it's not important to you. When you say like, I have work, I have this, I'm supposed to keep up with my marriage, I'm supposed to keep up with this, I'm supposed to keep up with this. Is the room more important to you than the myriad of other things? Then here's what I would recommend you do. If it's not, because what you're saying is, the room's gonna be messy.
Yeah.
And that's
So-
cool for me. Like, I would rather do that, but you're picking your battles.
Okay, quick final point.
One last thought is, and I have to quote the great Peter Gray, who is one
Explain
of
who
the
that
co-founders.
is, yeah.
Peter Gray was one of the co-founders with me of Let Grow, and he's a professor at Boston College, and he's spent his whole life studying the importance of different age kids playing together, figuring things out. And what I like most about him in this discussion is that he said there's a lot of parenting books out there and parenting experts because parents write them. But there's so many other influences on our kids, and to pretend like every interaction and every decision we make will make or break the child is one of the things that's driving us crazy, is one of the things that's making moms feel like, oh my God, I better wake up and be my best self and spend as much time as I can with the kid. And really, you gotta trust that they are born to rise. Right?
Can I ask, here is just a kind of exit question real quick on this. One of the things that happens in starting with the baby boom, not as parents, but as kids after World War II, and they're kind of the first fully formed adolescent generation where youth and being a kid as opposed to being a little adult, comes into being. If you go back and look, you see a lot of anxiety and stories about how the kids are running the house. Isn't that what we're still talking about? Is that like the real fear is that the kids are calling the shot in houses and that somehow upsets the
That's what
natural
she's
order?
talking about with permissive parenting.
Permissive
I think.
parenting,
Yes.
where
Yeah.
I think most people are getting it wrong, where they think that that's what gentle parenting is, and it's
Right.
all about
And they think
feelings.
that
And
that's
it's
what parenting
permissive,
is.
and you don't want it to be authoritarian, where it's like you're being
Strict,
run
harsh.
by Benito Mussolini, but you want authoritative,
You want a
where
happy
it's
medium, guys. You just want a happy.
want to
I mean,
Do
just make it
we-
make sense. Do you want your partner to look at you and to sort of shame you, and you had a bad day, and you're crying hysterically, and your partner looks at you and says, "Stop it. You're overreacting. Get in your room. I don't want to see your face." Just make it make sense. Like, it doesn't take that much to be like, "Oh, that was hard."
Very quickly,
like,
yes
follow
or
the
no,
rules.
do we have more snowflakes now than we did when any of us were kids?
What I've read is that as kids, independence and free play have been going down literally over the decades, their anxiety and depression have been going up.
I would say, personally, for myself, I think not just children, but I would say adults too, I think we are lacking moral courage in our country. I don't think people actually know how to be brave. I think we're so used and need to feel good all the time that when we feel bad, i.e. when we have to stand up for what's right, and that feels like rejection, we
What's a
can't
kid
do
have
it.
to do to stand up for what's right? I mean,
I think
8-year-old.
kids have to
My
stand up
room.
all the time for what's right. What do you mean by that?
I just mean, we're talking about like, can they get through the day without falling apart?
Yeah, but I think kids are, listen, there's a...
I mean, are they less resilient because
I think they
of the
are less
way
resilient,
that,
but I mean, we're talking about
Yeah.
6-year-olds, but we're also talking about 13, 14-year-olds. My point is like, I was taught at a very young age how to be brave. which meant how to speak up for myself if somebody was harming me, how to like articulate what I need, and a little bit of like what's right and wrong.
And
I
is
think
the
we have to teach
problem with
at-
that is that we no longer expect the kid to stand up for themselves, but they go to the adult in the room, or they just suck it up?
Well, I think I talk about this with girls. I think we socialize girls at a very young age to be perfect. And so when they're bad at gymnastics.
I don't doubt that, but
Yeah.
doesn't it seem like we do that a lot less than we did when Lenore and I were in knee
I
pads?
actually feel like we do it
short
more.
Really?
I don't know, maybe
What,
that's
shaming?
No, I
girls
think
more,
that
or
no,
what?
Expecting girls to be
I think
quiet and
well,
submissive.
Nick, we didn't have Instagram back then. You know, when the founders of Instagram and Facebook designed the like button, they based it off of a focus group of girls because they knew that girls were taught at a very young age to care about what other people thought. And if they put a button on there,
Be
you know what I
smaller,
mean?
shrink
If they put a
more
button on there that would be like, I like that outfit, they would
Would
get
you buy
coming
that?
back. And so yes.
I would love to. I have a little bit of a hot take, but this is probably the place for
okay,
it.
go.
I'm just going to say that the people who are outraged that this generation is snowflakes are snowflakes themselves.
True.
I think that they are men, sometimes women, who cannot handle when life throws hard things at them. I think they erupt at the barista when there's a wrong coffee order. I think they are the ones flipping people off in traffic. I think maybe there's some people in office. I think that those people were raised in really harsh environments where they actually cannot handle hard moments. They actually crumble. They're the ones who are spanking their children. They're the ones who are out of control. They're yelling at their wife, and they can't handle the smallest setback or emotion. I think that when you have permissive kids, sure, maybe they're looking at those kids and being like, those kids are out of control. But the research shows time and time and time again, if you have high empathy, but boundaries are the most important thing. If you have really firm boundaries with your kid's gonna have firm boundaries out there in that
So
world.
what you're saying
So
is
they're gonna go out in the world and
parents
say, no,
like
that doesn't work
Lenore
for me.
So bad.
have you raised all these snowflake men who are erupting at baristas?
All they do is
Right.
erupt at baristas. It's so
Okay.
strange that they go into Starbucks
Yeah.
specifically to erupt. That's their goal.
Well,
I just
all right.
wanted to put in a good
Yeah,
word
okay,
for free
very cool.
play. Let's
Okay.
just
Free
talk
Play,
about
I'm with you on the
free
free
play.
play all the way.
free
Yeah,
play
just-
All the
because
way.
if kids have
All
time
the way.
when they have to figure out what to do, who
All
they're
the
going to
way.
play with, nobody wants to play with the jerk ends up
Social
not
interaction,
erupting.
boundaries,
Right.
standing up
Let's-
for
But it's not
themselves.
us setting boundaries
Yeah.
all the time. A lot of the times it is self-correcting, and we've really taken sort of the natural life out of kids'
I agree.
lives and replaced it with us doing exactly the right thing, being authoritarian but not authoritative, and it's so hard.
We're going to go into a lightning round now. I'm going to
Fun.
ask you a question,
Yes.
and I want a quick yes or no answer so we know where you all fall. Participation trophies, are these a bad thing? Or, I have only had participation trophies in my life, but this is something people talk about. Everybody wins. Is that bad
No, I
for
think
kids?
failure is great.
For me, the point is there's a trophy that means there's an adult watching, and I like free play without adults there.
Failure is a good lesson.
Kid leashes. This was a big baby boomer thing. Lenore
It
started
was a
that.
big- no, we didn't have those in-
Kids
oh, no,
look back in the early
absolutely
50s. There were a lot of
I've
kids on
seen them
leashes.
worse than- they're not going to be on a leash when they're 18. I wouldn't worry about it.
Okay.
I don't
We're
think-
all agreed, right? Sleep training. Is sleep training essential, or is it, a lunatic fantasy of
No,
control?
that's actually when I read a book.
I'm not answering that if this is going on the internet.
Okay.
That's what I'll say.
I'm not sure what that means.
Sleep is the craziest thing that you'll see on the
Sleep is
internet.
really
with-
hard,
Yeah.
and I did read. I think I read Ferber. I think we Ferberized our kid, where you let
And
him
that's
cry for a
cried
couple
out,
of days.
and then
Yeah,
they
it
learn
does-
it's easier to
does
stay
seem
asleep
work.
than
I think
to.
But I didn't know what to do.
Yeah, I
That's
think
what I
so
did.
these are-
There are experts
not
who.
answering.
That's why I'm not the expert.
Okay, circumcision, male circumcision. Let's be clear.
Personal choice.
For Jews.
I mean, we do it too, Hindus, so I guess, sure.
Okay.
I mean, but again, it's your choice, right?
Yeah,
What
but-
a strange question, Nick.
Why? This
some
is
people
one of
might
the,
have a really-
one of the biggest,
It's
it's
like it's another culture war. Sorry, I didn't even know it was.
Starting sometime around the 30s or 40s, the vast majority of boys born in America were circumcised at birth, regardless of religion, usually at the hospital or in the doctor's office shortly
Yeah, yeah,
after.
yeah.
That's now approaching something like only 50%.
Yeah.
There's like
So
a
it's
wave
it's an
of
interesting.
I would say
Consent
if your culture or religion dictates it, there you go.
Yeah. Are kids worse off today than 30 years ago?
Wait, what was 30 years
Are
ago?
they worse off than
Like in the 90s?
Yes, because
Say
of, I believe,
1996.
because of social media and screens, anxiety and depression skyrocketing, yes.
And I saw it going up before the screens and before social media, and I'd say yes, and it's because of less independence, less responsibility, less free play.
And I mean, like, if I had a daughter, I would say yes, because she would have less rights than I had when I was born.
How does that?
We've lost our reproductive rights. So she has less rights.
She's more likely to graduate from college. She's more likely to graduate from
mean,
a STEM course. She's
maybe-
more likely to graduate from law school,
Actually,
medical
let me
school.
let me go back here. So
Okay.
absolutely. So our reproductive rights have been taken away. Congress is trying to pass the SAVE Act, which means if you change your name, it's harder for you to actually vote.
Right.
They're trying to make birth control illegal. In 13 states, STEM after-school programs that are designated for girls are quite frankly being outlawed. And you have a whole bunch of people in culture right now that think girls shouldn't be engineers. So I disagree.
Yes or no, are kids overscheduled?
Yes.
Duh.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. That's it for the flash round. This has been a lot of fun. Let's move on to another big shift, how and where kids spend their times. Here's a few quick numbers. Parents spend a lot more time with their kids than they used to. In 2018, mothers spent nearly 5 hours a week in the presence of their children, and that compares to 1 hour, 45 minutes in 1975. 60% of kids at age 11 have a smartphone. In fact, the Surgeon General's office just issued a warning about the health impacts of scrolling and excessive screen time for kids and teens. That's highly contested, I will say. And according to a recent study from the Institute for Family Studies, they found that 60% of 17-year-olds are not permitted to roam further than their neighborhood unsupervised. 60% of 17-year-olds. Many of us remember childhoods where we roamed alone or with friends, and by 17, which is the driving age, the maximum driving age in all states, many are at 16, we're driving to nearby towns. We didn't have phones. Our parents didn't know where we were for hours on end. So coming back to this question, should kids be freer to roam than they are now? And part of this is a response to a structural change, which is as both parents are working more often, kids are in more institutional settings.
And there's so many schools that won't let the kid get off the school bus, once again, at 3:30 in the afternoon. It's like, so just quit your job and go wait at the school bus, because they're not going to let them walk 4 blocks or sometimes 4 houses home. I heard from a mom whose kid gets dropped off at the end of the driveway, and the mom has to come out and say, I'm here. I'm here, because the assumption is that anytime a child is unsupervised, they are automatically in danger. And the statistic I love from that Institute for Family Studies survey of 25,000 American parents that just came out is that the majority of 14-year-olds are not allowed off their block. So you talk about a structure that's going to keep women down and keep parents crazy. It's when the assumption is that some adult must always be with a kid. And 14-year-olds.
And can I just ask real quickly, it's not like it would be better if, let's say, we change gender roles so that it's the father waving at the end of the driveway. Your
right now
point
I'm talking about
is,
for the kid.
Yeah.
Right. For the kid, it is better to have some independence time. There's a professor now studying independence is actually therapy for kids with a diagnosis of anxiety. And the way he describes it is like, if you're scared of dogs, there's exposure therapy. You first just look at a picture of a dog, and then you're across the street from a dog, and then you pet the dog, and then you realize, oh my God, this is a really cute and wonderful thing. Now you want a dog.
Yeah.
Well, right now we've kept kids away from real life because they're always having an adult there who will say something nice, or I'll pay for this, or don't do that. And so kids are afraid of life, and what they need is exposure back to it, and that's exposure without us there.
Do you real quickly, when you were growing up, do you feel like you had that ability
Of course.
to roam?
Of course I had that ability to roam. Let me just tell you one other statistic, which I wanted to contrast with 14-year-olds are not allowed off their block.
Right.
But there was a book, maybe you've seen me quote it, called Your 6-Year-Old, Loving and Defiant. And it just has a checklist of what normal 6-year-olds were doing back in 1981. And it was, can you tell your right foot from your left foot? Can you, I don't know, have you lost a baby tooth? And one of the things was, does your child go 4 to 8 blocks in any direction, to school, to the store, to a friend's house? So a 6-year-old was going 8 blocks, and now a 14-year-old is not allowed off their block.
And
That's
we might
a radical
add, and
shift.
I'm going to come to you in a second, and we might add that if you look at any possible negative outcome to a child in terms of crime, abduction, just accidents, etc. In 1981, it was infinitely higher than it is now. So older kids in a safer America are more leashed to their backyard, if they're even allowed out in their yard.
But can I, I want to, because Nick, you said something, and I want to make sure you're not saying, because oftentimes you said this has been happening since both people have entered the workforce. So I just want to make sure that we're not saying that the reason why people are less likely to roam is because more women are working.
No, what I'm saying is that if both parents are working, then where do the kids go?
Well, I don't know.
Like if they're in daycare,
Well, daycare
which
young.
is, they're
No, but they're daycare
can't
and
roam
school,
the block.
and then after
whoa,
school.
whoa,
If they're at school, they're
But I don't
No,
think
no,
that
hold on. Let Reshma.
I don't think that that's necessarily what's happening, because I think that it's oftentimes, because remember, like, there's a lot of women or men who are quite frankly not working full time. So is this really about the fact that they're in institutional places, as you call them? Because a lot of kids are quite frankly in home care. So they're in neighborhoods. So they're not all in institutionalized daycare. I think a lot has happened is because we have a tremendous amount of fear and distrust, because when I, again, open my social media feed, which is where most people get their information, someone is being molested, someone is being abducted, someone is being killed. And the thing that we didn't talk about, like, look, I was a latchkey kid, and it wasn't because my mother did all this research and independent research about how it's because
she was working.
she couldn't afford daycare.
Right.
So like, but there was trust. There was trust that my sister could walk 6 blocks, pick me up, we would walk home, and nobody would abduct us. That trust does not exist. Secondly, we're not talking about the experience of race, and it is very important to talk about the experience of both race and class. For our film, we interviewed this mother, Nadia, who lived in a predominantly white neighborhood. And one of the parents called her and she said, "Oh, the boys are going to walk home to the party." And Nadia said, "No, no, no. And you might feel comfortable because your son is white, but my son is black. And if he's walking 9 blocks in this predominantly white neighborhood, the chances of something happening to him are much higher." And so I want to know, that 60% of 17-year-olds, is that reaction to a very understandable fear by parents and mothers that something could happen to my children. People don't have trust. People do not have trust.
So where does, this is a question of them, where does that come from? Because, and Lenore, a lot of your work has documented the fact that most of the risks to children and
are from people they know.
There's
No,
but and again, you have to look at this through a gender lens, through a class lens, through a race lens. But in each of those circumstances, people are much more fearful. This was something I wrote about in the 90s all the time. As children there was no risk of being abducted by a stranger. People in the 90s went bananas, and by the end of the 90s, we were like, kids need to have, chips put in them so that we can track them. So let me just ask.
I remember the milk
The start of the milk carton.
Well, this is where does that fear come from?
Yeah, it's perception, not reality. I think that fear, I'm sorry, but I think a lot of that is culturally based. Because there is a large segment of the population that believes that a woman's place is at home. And so if mothers were at home, the kids would be good. And so you have to actually put that fear out there that there are these creepy weepies, right, that are going to be out there doing something to your children. But the only way to be a good mom
is to
stay at home.
No. I think the way to be a good parent is to call BS on the idea that the only thing that out there, it's just like child molesters everywhere.
But that's not what I agree with you. But the message that we're signaling to, in particular, women and men, is that to be a good mother means that you're at home.
I also think,
or to be a good parent, that your kids are accounted for. That we have a panopticon childhood now. where you have to be accountable every minute of every
there's
day.
it's not just circumstance, that helicopter parenting has arisen at the same time that fear is enhanced, at this, because it is a sense that you just got to constantly be circling your child or something bad is going to happen to them. And the worst thing you can say to them.
And I'm sorry to, I want to hear from you in a second, but also the flip side of helicopter parenting, I think as a phenomenon, was less about protecting your kids from child molesters, and it was making sure that they had every opportunity so they would go to Yale rather than UConn, right? They would go to Harvard rather than University of Massachusetts. And it's like, you got to be in there and you got to be in the enrichment programs. And we don't talk about after school in the same way. They're enrichment programs, and you are in a you're doing competitive debate, you're doing sports leagues year round, always to notch up. And that part is not something that is coming from lower or even middle classes. It's an elite that is trying to maintain its edge.
Wait, it's not just the elite.
Yeah.
I just want to say that there was this giant study that Cornell, an Ivy League school, did
Land Grant College, actually.
There you go, right, labor school. Did 6 years ago, and it found that literally across the economic spectrum, all parents thought that the more activities you could put your kid in, the better off they were going to be. So whether you could afford them or not, whether they were free from the school or not, everybody wanted their kids to be more supervised. And it's not just the fear of abduction, it's the fear of your kid falling behind. And then there's this spiral. Well, if everybody's getting SAT prep and my kid doesn't, then my kid is 200 points lower.
This is an excellent point. And so you can't roam if you're constantly in activity after activity after activity after activity.
Which is why Legro says keep the schools open for free play.
Let's end this segment and go on to the next one. But Kristin, quick point.
Okay, just as the millennial who's literally living this and seeing this, I think it is 100%.
Oh, your kids are too young for the full horror.
Well, mine's
of
9.
this to
I mean,
become
she's
a
9.
parent.
She's in All-Star. She's in competitive everything, and 7, whatever. But I think almost 100% of this comes from social media. All we see on social media, I just saw it the other day, really sad story about the FedEx worker who abducted the 3-year-old child. Back in 1980, you wouldn't have heard of that.
No.
You wouldn't have heard of somebody across the country, and this wouldn't have been the major
but
news.
you would have heard about. You would have heard about.
You would have had the perspective.
You would have heard about a busload of children being kidnapped and buried underground in California. Or you would have heard about Eton Pats.
We are.
And
then you
Walsh.
see all the
You would hear about it on the news for your 30-minute nightly news hour. What you're not doing is consuming a fear scroll.
Right, that's true.
24 hours a day, you're waiting in an elevator.
And then when you click on it once,
when
it sends you
what
everyone.
the statistics show is that sexual abuse happens 90% of the time amongst people who know your child. So these are not abductors in a white candy van. These are people who know your child. These are people. It's a complete fear of letting them go down the street.
I'm going to provide one PSA that's really helpful for parents. Because 90% of the terrible things that happen to kids are at the hands of people they know, teach them the 3 R's rather than stranger danger. The 3 R's are recognize nobody can touch you, wear your bathing suit covers. 2 is resist, run, kick, scream. And 3 is report. You can tell me anything that happened, even if they said keep it a secret, I won't be mad at you. Those 3 things are going to keep your kids a lot safer than never letting them outside.
All right, let's go to a new section. A lot of chatter has been made about how kids interact with screens and the internet. And that's important, and we're going to touch on that. But I also want to start with how social media and the internet has impacted parents. And we know part of this is the anxiety of reading, oh my God, like FedEx, okay, I'm going to use UPS, I can't use UPS.
No,
Postal workers, they're the worst of the bunch,
They
right?
kill everybody.
Yeah, so parents now have access to influencers on places like Reddit and elsewhere. Virality goes nuts. Lenore knows this. Imagine how much more viral you would have been now as the world's worst mom. Is this kind of social media helping to improve parenting and have more online connection with parents? There's a lot of people who post perfectionist, idyllic visions of motherhood, of fatherhood, of parenthood. But there's also people who try to post authentic parenting content. And there's a lot of advice on how to get your kids to eat broccoli. Lenore, in your experience, has social media made knowing how to parent.
You can't know how
harder.
to parent. You can't know how to parent. I mean, it's not a thing. It's not an extracurricular. It's this relationship. So the idea of reading like the exact script you're supposed to say when your kid is melting down or their cookie broke or something like that is just, it's a lot to expect parents to comport with and also to remember. I mean, how are you supposed to remember all this stuff, exactly what you're supposed to say?
But you don't find any useful content there.
I'm sure, I'm not reading it because my kids, as we've discussed, they're either eating their broccoli or not at this point. They're in the late 20s.
Blissfully, you're kind of unaware of that.
Blissful unawareness is good, but also I just feel like there's a lot of emphasis on parenting, period. And what I'd love us to do is realize like it's not all up to us. Take a chill pill. It's going to be okay.
Now, I just because
Kristin,
I have a hot sort of take back
You are
to that.
full of hot
I
takes.
actually have to push back just a little bit because I love what you're saying and I actually agree fully.
And you're pushing back.
For someone like you who was parented the way you were parented and now parent the way you parent, it's very easy to say just whatever comes to you, this is how you parent and you trust. For people who grew up in abusive households, who people grew up in dark households, who people grew up in being parented in ways that they do not want to parent their children, if they were to say, I'm just going to sit back and there's no one way to parent and I'm not going to learn how to parent at all, those people are going to completely pass down all of the generational habits that they are unintentionally trying not to. They're going to feel strong urges to hit their kids if they were hit. They're going to feel strong urges to do all the things their parents didn't. Now, what I think is different is we don't need to be obsessive. We don't need to be on social media 100% of the time. We don't need to get this right 100% of the time. But I do have to push back on the whole like, kind of put your hands off and do what comes to you. That's what my parents did. I did not turn out fine.
I'll come back to you in a second.
Okay.
Kristin, Big Little Feelings has 4 million followers on Instagram. Are the people who are coming there, are they coming mostly from dysfunctional families, or why do people look to you for advice?
I think some are. I think that most people, not just in our generation, but also previous generations, they do want to evolve. They do want to parent a little bit differently than their parents do. So we do have many that came from a traumatic background, and they need to truly rewire how they instinctually parent, like we were just talking about. They would erupt, they would do things that do not in line with how they want to parent. But we also just have people who are raised in ways that we were raised, like, hey, stop crying, get in the corner, be not seen, not heard. And they just want to do things a little differently with their kids.
Right. I mean, this is part of, we put down social media, but, we have, I brought 3 books that represent 3 generations. Dr. Spock, which was the best-selling book for the baby boom and beyond. What to expect when you're expecting. This was the Bible that I used with my kids,
mine too.
and now with my youngest son, Emily Oster. But people are always looking for expert advice. Tell me, how do you find good advice or bad advice online? How do you sift through who's the right expert?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think going back to your point about like, is all social media bad? And I would say you're right, it's not. I mean, one of the things I think that was really powerful about the pandemic is that it opened up everyone's living rooms, right? And you realize that, it's not just me. I'm not a bad parent or a bad mom. We're all trying to struggle and balance, even in the
and a lot of recognized experts were talking out of both sides of their mouth.
Yeah.
To put it kindly.
Yeah, and so to that point too, like, for our work, obviously I do a lot of work on childcare, but just allowing people to be like, wait, I'm spending $10,000, I'm spending $4,000, you realize the outrage. And I think that instills like community. I mean, I think that what you're saying is really important. Listen, I'm a nerd. I always want to get better at what I do. I want to get better at tennis. You know what I mean? I want to get better, be a better swimmer. I want to be a better parent. I think we all do. I mean, what a gift to be a mother. It's like the best title I could ever imagine to have. And so I think the question is like, how do you create the conditions such that everyone has the opportunity to do that?
I also think that social media, one problem with it, because I completely agree with that, and I think if we were really in charge of our own social media instead of sort of just fed it, that's what we would see. We would follow the things only that we're interested in and not follow. The problem that I see in modern motherhood, especially towards women on social media, is what we are being fed. First of all, is the most when I say grotesque, I mean the most viral content is being shown to you. What's that? It's divisive. It's something that makes you go, stop this or you're going to ruin your kid today. And that's what's being shown to you. The more explosive, the more divisive it is, the more it's going to make you feel terrible. That's what you're being shown. Yeah. Then on the other side, you're also seeing 20 different kinds of women. You're seeing a woman who is perfectly organizing her house over here, but then somebody is baking a sourdough over here. Somebody is a fitness mom over here. Somebody is really into emotional health over here. Somebody is really into cooking over here. So we as women think, I need to do all of these things, but these are one person, one person, one person, one person, one person. So it's up to us to say, I am not a sourdough baker. Right. I am not a fitness model. Yeah. What I am, I'm into emotional regulation, and I'm into like not organization, but I'll watch it because it's pretty. That's the pressure that I see as the problem. Can I add to that?
I think that's such an important point. The problem is like we don't get to choose because the way that the algorithms
are. What do you mean you don't get to choose? You can block people and change. I mean, this is.
You actually cannot.
We need to, as social media people, we need to become much more dogmatic.
No, here's the problem. You got to turn it off because the thing is at the end of the day, we are humans. And sometimes I'm curious and I see a panda bear kissing a frog and I click on it because it's interesting.
And then you're signing up for ISIS,
right? Panda bears and frogs all day long. But my point is like it takes an enormous amount of discipline, right?
Well, no, but this is what, this is the promise in the same way of like you can, there's a shelf full of books in the 3 or 4 bookstores left in America. They've got a giant parenting section, and you have to pick and choose.
Lenore, but I think book started out as 300 pages, and then the next edition was like 400, and the next was 500 because they kept coming up with new problems for you to worry about.
Well, it's also people writing in and saying, "Oh, well, what about this? What about this?"
But I will also say that these books are not designed to be addictive, and so that's what we always do say too. I don't need you to follow me. I don't need you to follow every single thing. What I would like you to do, especially if you were raised in a household that was traumatic, that is not the way you want to parent, pick one thing and then follow it and let the rest go.
But also, it's not designed to make
this is not addictive. You're not going to follow 100 books.
To feel bad about yourself. We have to go back to why was the like button designed? Right. It was designed because we knew that in particular women and girls will feel bad about themselves. So we don't always click on the things that teach us. We click on the things that judge us because that is innate and it has to be unlearned.
As we wrap up, one final question for all of you, and we'll start with Reshma. What did your parents do that most screwed you up that you tried to avoid carrying into your own parenting?
Sorry.
Growing up in a South Asian Indian immigrant family, we weren't very affectionate. So one of the things that I do is like a side hug.
You can do it.
And I'm like, so when people try to hug me, I just don't give. So I think I try to infuse a lot more touching, hugging, kissing with my children.
Right. Thank you. Lenore?
The only thing I can think of off the bat is, and bat is the operative word, is that we didn't do any sports. Sports were, back then, they still weren't for girls. And so I have 2 boys, but, one of them was really into sports.
Kristin?
Your sound. I don't know. Now we got another hour.
What my parents did that most screwed me up, I think, were sort of extreme punitive measures, physical punishment, but at a core also trying to change me into being a normal, good girl. I have ADHD. I was a daydreamer. I wasn't good in school. I wasn't as good as my sister. What's wrong with you? Those deeply stayed with me into my adulthood. And I think I had one person who believed in me. I needed more belief in me to be exactly who I am today, which is everything I was punished for as a child, as a girl, pushing back, not following rules, breaking rules, being loud, being aggressive, I am now rewarded for as a CEO. And I wish that's probably what screwed me up most, was to try to be a good girl.
Right. Wow, in a narrow specific way. Yeah. Okay. Thank you again, Kristin, Lenore, Reshma.
Thanks.
It was a pleasure to have you join us today.
Thank you.
This is great. Nick.
That's it for this week. A big thank you to the audience for tuning in. This episode was made possible thanks to a generous gift from Liberty Ears Foundation. Our work is also made possible by listeners like you, the Rosencrantz Foundation, and supporters of Open to Debate. Robert Rosencrantz is our founder. Our CEO is Leah Matthau. I'm Nick Gillespie. We'll see you next time on Open to Debate.